Welcome to the Adecco Better Work, Better Life interview series. Today I'm here with Tripp Allen. Tripp is founder and director at Egyii Consulting and has over 25 years of successful global sales and senior sales management experience in Fortune 500 technology companies and in the sales learning and development field. At Egyii, he is the expert on what makes businesses work, relationships. Throughout his career, Tripp has worked with internal staff, salespeople and clients in Asia and North America and has a keen awareness of what makes them all tick, the interpersonal skills and the personal relationships. Today we will be talking with Tripp about trust in business and why this topic is so important. Tripp, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Ian.
First question to kick off with. In today's competitive markets, it's fair to say that one of the key differentiators in business is the people that work in organizations and the relationships that they build both internally and externally. The way to succeed in relationships with clients is through trust. But how do you approach trust?
Well, trust can be a little bit complicated. So what I want to do is simplify it as best as possible.
Okay.
So let's put it into context here. Let's say that I am the HR manager and you're the senior executive. And I want or need to build a relationship with you. The first thing we need to look at is to trust, which is a verb. And that's the actual trust between two, the act of trusting. The second is trust, the noun. And that's the actual relationship that exists between us.
Right.
And the third is trustworthiness, which is also a noun. And that is really the characteristics and traits that I exhibit to help build trust between the two of us. And that's what we're going to focus on today, trustworthiness.
So how does someone then build trust and trustworthiness?
That's a good question. Let's look back at the scenario I talked about earlier where, again, I'm the HR manager and you're the senior executive. I want to build a relationship with you. I want to build a trusted relationship with you. However, you're going to probably be a little bit hesitant and you're going to see this as risky. So what we need to do is remove that risk. How do we do that? There's really two ways to do that. One is through teaching trust and the awareness around it. And a lot of this is you're going to say, well, I know that, I'm well aware of that, I already know how to do that. So it's going to be pretty simple and straightforward, not rocket science. The second part, we utilize 3 models. And I'm going to go into one model, into a little bit of detail, what that's all about. And that's called the trust equation. And it's an analytical approach of building trustworthiness. So there's 4 parts to this. The first part is credibility. That's actually the words that you say. Second part is reliability. These are your actions. The third part is intimacy. These are the emotions. And typically what we use is empathy here. And the last one is self-orientation. That is your motives. That's rather than being focused on me, I need to focus on you.
Right.
So quite honestly, the most powerful of those two is intimacy and self-orientation. You want to be very high in your credibility. You want to be very high in your reliability, high in intimacy, but very low in self-orientation.
HR as a strategic partner to the business is a hot topic. Tell me about how trust plays an important part in this.
Okay. Again, I am the HR manager and you're the senior executive. In order to be strategic, I need to offer you advice. But what are the chances of you listening to my advice?
Right.
You're probably wondering who I am and what I'm all about. So, of course, the ways to get around that is initially through the trust equation. So you're going to offer high levels of credibility, high levels of reliability, high levels of intimacy, and a low level of self-orientation. And I talk about listening, and what's been proven is if I listen to you first, there's a better chance of you listening to me back.
Right.
So that's the ability to offer advice to you. And let me give you an example. This is a great example because what I typically use is a nurse. Who could be more trusted or trustworthy than a nurse?
Right.
She or he uses a very high level of intimacy and empathy and a very low level of self-orientation.
Right.
And that particular nurse listens and then is able to offer advice. So be the nurse is my advice. So where does this put you? It does put you at a higher level. Your relationships gets a lot better, so therefore you have the ability to offer that strategic advice you want to offer.
Right. We talked about the HR manager and HR directors a little bit. In Singapore, is trust on the radar of the HR professional yet?
Well, there's a lot of talk around trust in the HR profession and everywhere, and it is starting to take off at this point, yes.
It is good.
Yes.
So what happens when you become a trusted advisor?
Well, let me go back to a book that was written by Stephen M.R. Covey. It's called The Speed of Trust.
Yes, right.
And what he says is, within that is, as trust increases, business increases, and costs decrease. And I'd like to add to that that revenues also increase. So let me give you a very simple example. A curbside hot dog vendor in New York City, he's got a fantastic product. The customers love it. But what's happening is he's getting long queues around the block, and he's unable to service the clients. So what does he do? He decides to set up an honor system, and it's built around trust. And he puts a cash box in the front. And what he's done is he's shown his trust in his clients that they'll actually do the transactions, the cash transactions on their own. So what's the result of this? Well, ultimately what happens is, obviously the speed of business goes up. He gets more revenue,
right,
because the people don't have to wait and they're not leaving the line. You know, it's New York City, they're not going to wait very long, they're pretty impatient. And he really keeps his costs down because he doesn't have to hire somebody to do those cash transactions. So that's a simple example, but if you put yourself into your shoes as an HR manager, imagine what trust can do for you. What can it do? It can really speed up the business. There's going to be less paperwork. There's going to be more collaboration and ideation between you two. And really it's going to put you in that position so that you are strategic enough to offer that advice that you want to offer to the senior executives.
Right, right. And I think especially after the last few years in business, trust is more important than it's ever been before. I think it's fair to say, yeah.
Agreed, especially with the financial crisis. Again, lots of people are talking about it, so it's a hot issue.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us today, Tripp. It's
My
been
pleasure.
great to spend some time with you, and look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks, Ian.